Now on the APEC VIP hotline, cutting-edge training for the serious athlete. The results show when the athletes hit the field. APECGo.com. Joining us from the Houston Chronicle, the sports columnist, Randy Harvey, the pride of Tyler Junior College. How you doing, Randy?
Doing great. Doing great.
You're hesitating. What's going on?
Well, I feel a little bit guilty because I'm taking a time away from my house plants. As you tweeted earlier today, this is House Plant Appreciation Day,
yes.
And I know they were expecting me to take them to breakfast.
Yeah, well, I'm sorry. Sometimes you may just have to put that off. Try doing that with your wife, right? Good luck there.
No, that's not a discussion we would be having.
No, we won't go there. I've got to ask you, before we get to the Texans and the playoff game this weekend, the Hall of Fame vote came down, and it's a dark day for baseball when nobody gets in. But it's especially dark down in Houston because I think that Craig Biggio really deserved to be in the Hall of Fame. What's your take on his stiffing yesterday?
Well, I think it's a travesty. I don't mind nobody getting in if nobody deserves it, but Biggio, certainly with over the 3,000 hits in the career he had, certainly deserved it. And I think he will get in. I think there are still some veteran baseball writers who don't believe in voting for a player on the first ballot unless it's Willie Mays or Roberto Clemente or somebody like that. So I think that probably hurt Biggio. I think also there were some of the writers just out of protest over the steroid era didn't vote for anyone. I think there were probably enough of those people if they had voted for anyone and they didn't want to vote for the Barry Bonds and those guys that they would have voted for Biggio. So I think there were some circumstances there that hurt him, but he definitely is a Hall of Famer. And whether he's in the Hall of Fame yet or not, I think you can certainly feel safe in calling him. He is a Hall of Famer. What
do you make of the people who say, well, he just accumulated all these numbers because he stayed in the league for a really long time?
No, I don't know. There's a lot of guys who stayed in the league for a long time, who got numbers, who are in the Hall of Fame. So I think that's probably a tribute to what good shape he stayed in and how committed he was to the game. And I just don't buy that argument. I mean, 3,000 hits is 3,000 hits. And I think if he played in New York, Boston, one of the big major media capitals, he would have been a slam dunk. Playing in Houston, I think he probably didn't get the attention or respect that he deserved.
I think we said the same thing yesterday about him. If he'd have been a Yankee, he'd have been he probably would have had 95% of the votes.
There's really no question if he had played in that kind of media market that there certainly would have been a push, a huge push for him to be in the Hall of Fame on the first ballot. And but I know in Houston people are glad that he played here, and he'll get in the Hall of Fame. It's just not this time.
Jeff Bagwell, a Hall of Famer?
Bagwell is iffy, I think. He's a guy who could get in. I think he's probably more on the bubble. It wouldn't surprise me if he got in. It wouldn't surprise me if he didn't.
Okay, fair enough. All right, the Texans playing this weekend at the Patriots. The Texans... you mentioned, I saw that you were commenting on it on television on Sunday night, a Boston newspaper column. Shaughnessy wrote it, calling the Texans fraudulent. What did you have to say about that?
I think fraudulent is a little bit of a strong word. I think they were certainly, the night they played in New England, they certainly played like a fraudulent team. I don't think you win 13 games in this league and are fraudulent. I think maybe overrated is a better word. I mean, they're a good football team. I don't think they're a Super Bowl team. That doesn't mean they couldn't win it. I didn't think the Giants were a Super Bowl team last year. But the Texans just haven't been playing well lately, and I think you need to have you need to have some momentum going into the playoffs. You need to be peaking at the right time, and I think that the Texans peaked very early, and now are on the downside of where they're headed.
What do you think's missing?
Oh, I think the main thing that's missing on defense, I think some of the things we're missing were something that happens to almost every team is that you get some injuries in key places, and their linebacking core has just been has really been hurt by injuries, and they didn't have a lot of depth there. They've had to bring in some guys who were cut by other teams who probably don't belong out there with a Super Bowl contending team. And so that's really hurt them, especially on third down. It's made it very difficult for them to stop teams on third down. That's defense, and that's just in the natural course of things. That's what happens with almost all teams. Is you get injuries, and it just depends on what kind of depth you have. On offense, I think that what happened is very early in the season, maybe around the fourth or fifth game, people tended to figure out what they were doing. The Texans were coming out and scoring, 30 points a game, and looked like a real offensive juggernaut. But that's what defensive coaches do. They're smart. That's why they're defensive coordinators in the NFL, is that they adjusted to what the Texans were doing, and then the Texans never really readjusted, just kept trying to play that same game. And I think so what's lacking on offense is creativity.
Reading some columns over the weekend, a lot of people critical of Gary Kubiak, saying that he was very, very conservative, playing for field goals instead of touchdowns. Any validity to that?
Oh, I think so. You look at the other games that were played over the weekend, and you see every team except for the Texans, when they get inside the red zone, they're going to take a shot or two at the end zone, and Kubiak likes to run on first down from inside the 20, and then if it's a 1 or 2 yard gainer or goes for negative yards, then it looks to me like he just kind of shuts it down and plays for the field goal, plays for the chip shot field goal. That came down back to Burnham against Indianapolis, because they were better than Indianapolis, and that strategy would have worked, except in Indianapolis had the two big plays, the kickoff return and the 70-yard touchdown pass on 3rd and 23, and that was the difference in the game. So they've got to go for the end zone, and you can't score touchdowns from inside the end zone unless you try to score touchdowns from inside the end zone. And Kubiak himself will say, well, we conceded in that situation, and which to me means that he's conservative.
Is that a lack of confidence in Schaub?
I think it's a combination. It's a confidence in his defense. His defense is going to be able to keep the game close enough so that field goals will win it. And it's also, I think, a lack of confidence in Schaub and not just Schaub though, but that team over the last few weeks has had a lot of penalties. Until last week, they'd had a lot of sacks. They had 10 sacks in 3 previous games. So it's not just Schaub. I just think it's offensive mistakes in general, and Kubiak doesn't want to make those mistakes.
So do they have any momentum going into this ball game, coming off the 1913 wild card win over Cincinnati?
I don't think so. That wasn't the kind of game I think that you walk out of with a lot of confidence and that you're walking out of there saying, okay, here we're on our way to New Orleans for the Super Bowl. It certainly, they did what they had to do. So you win in advance, and that's good. So that they're glad to be one of the 8 teams still playing, but I doubt that they have a lot of confidence going into this game. I think they have to create that confidence early in the game. They have to do some things right. They have to get a lead. The running game has to be going. They have to get a couple of stops on Brady. Then I think all of a sudden you'll see some of that swagger back. But right now, it's hard for me to see them walking into New England with the same kind of swagger that they walked into their last time with an 11-run record.
Yeah, and then last time the Patriots won 42-14 and didn't have Gronkowski on the field. So what makes it different this week?
There's nothing that makes it different. It makes it tougher with Gronkowski out there. What makes it different is if they don't make those mistakes early and don't fall behind. They're not the kind of team that can come from behind. They just don't have that kind of explosive offense. They don't have that kind of explosive special teams that can get them good field position on returns. So they have to get the ball. They have to run it. They have to take some time off the clock. They have to keep Brady on the bench. When Brady is out there, they have to get some pressure on him. So they just have to do all the things that they should have done last time. But their game plan just went out the window when they fell behind. They made a couple mistakes early. They fell behind 21-0, and you're just not going to beat the Patriots when you fall behind 21-0 with the kind of offense that the Texans have.
So it sounds like, regardless of the outcome of these playoffs, the Texans are going to have to be looking for some pretty explosive playmakers in the draft.
Yeah, and they're not going to have a real high draft choice, but they do need. They've got to have somebody who can return kicks. They've got to have somebody who can catch the ball besides Andre Johnson. I mean, they never the entire season established that number 2 receiver, and they got real fortunate that Andre didn't go down like he did last year with an injury, because they've got nobody out there who can take his place. So yeah, they've got to get some playmakers. That's for sure. Okay,
so any chance of them winning this weekend then?
There's a chance. There's always a chance. And, it's not the way. If I were a betting man, which I'm not, I've seen too many sporting events to know. I'm too smart for that to bet any money on sporting events. So yeah, there's a chance if they play their game and New England makes a couple mistakes. New England is not invincible. Since they won their last Super Bowl, was that 2004? They're 6-7 in the playoffs. So it's not, they're 2-2 in their last 4 home games in the playoffs. They're not an invincible playoff team by any means. They play much better in the regular season than they do in the playoffs. So. There's a puncher's chance the Texans could win.
Just everything's got to fall just right.
Yeah, and I think that's the way it is a lot of times against New England. If you play, really well, if you hang with and make a couple big plays, like the last 2 Super Bowl appearances against the Giants. The Giants kind of hung in there and then made some big plays and won the game. So you got to keep it close. Helps if you get a lead. Helps if you put some pressure on Brady. Brady's got an incredibly quick release, so he's difficult to put much pressure on. But when he can't find an open receiver, he hates to be hurried, and he loses his cool a little bit when a team starts hurrying, like the Giants have been able to do. And so the Texans have a disruptive pass rush, so they need to get to him. They almost got to him a few times last time, but almost doesn't count. So
sure. Well, Randy, we appreciate you coming on with us. My apologies to your house plant, and do you
have to make it up to him later. I think I'm probably have to give the house plant flowers.
I think that'd be a wonderful thing. You ever make it up to East Texas at all?
Yeah, I do occasionally. My sister and brother-in-law live in Tyler, so I get up there sometimes.
Well, great. Maybe one time when you come up, we can get together then.
That'd be great.
I'd love to do that. Randy Harvey, thank you. Thanks very much for coming on with us, and have a great trip to New England this weekend.
All right, Brian. Thank you.
Good talking to you. Randy Harvey from the Houston Chronicle on Bryan Houston Sports Radio Live on 99.3 Talk FM.